Hello, it's Kate from Mental Health Memoirs, and this week I got the opportunity to interview one of my heroes, Amy Bell. Amy and I first met when we both lived in Greenwood, South Carolina a few years ago. Since that time, Amy's been diagnosed with breast cancer. We'll talk about that in the video, and also just her mental health background in general, some of the mental health struggles she's went through, and also how all of that's changed now with cancer. So thanks for watching this video. Definitely go over to the blog to check out my interview with Amy. And if you like the video, please comment on it, like it, and share it with a friend or somebody else you know that may like it as well.
I was 32. I have 4 children. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to fight this. Like, everything.
Tell me more about like cancer and like finding out about that and just what that journey's been like for you.
Yeah. So it started out, I got back from a mom and daughter trip with my mom and my sister from Disney World, and like had this just weird coloring on one of my breasts, like underneath it. And we just thought, oh, it doesn't itch, but it's probably a rash, no big deal. Like, I didn't think cancer, but I was like, something's wrong. And we tried some vitamin supplements to see if I was deficient in some things. And so I called Janet back and she's like, look, let's just get you a mammogram just to make you feel better. Mm-hmm. So we got it done, and immediately they were like, okay, the mammogram person who read it was like, let's go ahead and do an ultrasound today. So we were like, okay, well, that must mean, and in my mind, I thought, well, that's good news. I don't know why I thought that was good, but I was like, well, good. They want to look at it better. They want to look at it. Mm-hmm. And that night they were like, we're going to go ahead and refer you to a breast specialist. You need to have this biopsied. They're like, you have probably 5 or 6 unidentified. They're like, we don't know what they are. At this point, they still didn't think cancer. They were just like, we don't know what these things are. They don't look like cancer. They're weird. And we want you to biopsy them just to be sure. So like within the next 2 days, I went and had my biopsy. And even she's like, these are weird. She's like, I don't know what this is, but I guarantee it's going to come back as a cyst or it's going to come back as nothing. Don't panic. And it was maybe 2.5 days later. And when she called me, and it was almost 5 o'clock. So I was like, well, that's weird. And she was like, well, I don't know how to tell you this, but every single spot that we biopsied is cancer. She's like, this is very aggressive. She's like, we've got to move fast. Because she said from the time they did my mammogram to the time she did my biopsy, it had already grown and changed. It had already changed, and that was within a week. So she's like, we need to be more aggressive than it is. So, that next day I had appointments and my breast cancer navigator calling me, and like it moved really, really fast in the beginning.
Where are you at in the treatment process now? Like how have things been going?
All right. So chemo was really rough, but we are done with the chemo side. And then honestly, I thought going to radiation was going to be like this walk in the park compared to chemo, and radiation was really hard. I finished, maybe a month ago, I finished radiation, mm-hmm. and it was 29 straight days of treatment. Immediately, I'm a planner. So immediately I was like, I need to write letters to my kids. I need to fill out like birthday cards for the big birthdays, mm-hmm. Anniversary cards for my husband. I'm like, what if this is, because they've never really told us prognosis. They don't like to use that word. And they never really explained my staging. So in the beginning, I was like, all right, well, so this could take me out. Like, we don't know yet. So in the beginning, I was just automatically like planning, like, okay, for my girls on their wedding day, what would I want them to know? You know, I need to write them a letter. For my boys, when they, you know, go to propose to their fiance, this is what I would want to say to them. And just things of like, wow, what if I'm not here for those moments? That is what really, and the harder part was I thought Job won't know me. Like, he will not remember me at all. Like, he is so little that he will have no clue who I am.
Thinking about all these life events that are going to be like going on down the road and trying to be realistic and planning for it. But at the same time, like, that's just shot. Like, I mean, I think like nobody expects that news. And especially with you, like, young, like so young, and like everything is just, that's completely out of left field.
It's weird because I had just gotten into a good place after Job.
Yeah.
Like, I was just kind of coming out of my postpartum stuff, and all I could think was, why, God, would you let me fight to stay alive? Why did you keep me here just for cancer? Like,
yeah,
I was gonna kill myself. I was, you know, so depressed. I was suicidal. Like, why did you help me fight out of that just for cancer and for me to die? Like, I really struggled with that in the beginning, and that took a long time for me and God to kind of wrestle through, of just feeling like, because then it got to where I was like, is this a punishment? Is it because I wasn't thankful for my baby? And now this is like that, you know, God doesn't punish, but you know, when you're depressed and stuff, your brain doesn't see truth. And so for a long time, it was like, this is punishment for when I desperately wanted Job to die. And I was like, this is what I get for not being thankful for my baby, and for, you know, hoping he would die and then wanting myself to die. And so coming to cancer straight out of a very tough postpartum was hard.
Yeah, what you're saying makes sense. When you're depressed, it's like that inappropriate guilt. Everything you're talking about, like, that's postpartum depression. When you're in that postpartum depression state, it makes you like have those thoughts.
With Job, I think some of it was that not that unplanned pregnancies are harder, but I think a lot went into that. I was older than when I had my first four babies. Job was not expected. It was a very much like we had kind of felt like our family was through. So I felt very nervous coming into a baby that we hadn't necessarily, with my planning brain, planned. Not see the postpartum depression coming, because like Job's birth was such a mountaintop moment for us, because God really moved mountains for us for that birth. Like, he redeemed the birthing process, and we had a beautiful birth, and I felt so bonded to that baby and thought, well, this is going to be great. And then just somehow, he was a harder baby. He did not eat well. He did not sleep well. And just as the exhaustion hit, I just started, all of a sudden, I was angry all the time at all my kids. I was very angry. And at night, I would literally start to think, if he wasn't here, life could go back to what it was. I started like fantasizing, like not having him, and about how easy it would be. I would sleep again. Things would be easy again. And I really didn't think I had no idea I was depressed. No idea. And everybody kind of asked Charlie, they're like, man, y'all waited so long. Why didn't you reach out for help? And Charlie has told him, he's like, we didn't know it was bad until it was so bad that I had to have her at the hospital. Yeah. Like, we just kind of thought, oh, she just needs a nap. She's going to come through this. She's going to come out of this. And he kept thinking that he could, like, it was around Christmas. So he kept thinking like he could like do normal things, like bake Christmas cookies with the kids. And if I just laid there and like noticed it and smelled it, like, he just kept thinking he could pull me out of it on his own. that like I was just going through a rough patch and I would just, it was going to get better. But during that rough patch, I wasn't producing milk. The baby wasn't gaining weight. And it got to where Charlie had to physically take Job from me and say, I have to feed him a bottle or he's going to die. And I felt so devastated that I couldn't nurse my baby, felt like a failure. I mean, so that added into it. So my hormones were just, yes, depression is not always hormonal, but, postpartum depression is vastly, related to your hormones just not doing right. And a couple of weeks before the depression really got bad, I started taking a hormonal supplement to try to produce milk. So I kind of have wondered, like, was that supplement really swinging me way too far? I wouldn't change it. I mean, God taught me so much through it, but I do wonder if like that was the catalyst. And until Charlie knew I wasn't okay. And then I vividly remember like standing in front of him and saying, I want to stop wanting to kill myself. Like, I want that to stop. And that next day is when he took me in and was like, because that night I couldn't sleep. I thought I was literally dying. Like I felt like this in my mind, all my blood was rushing to the middle of my body. I couldn't feel my extremities. I don't know why. And so I thought, I'm laying here dying. And so when he woke up, I was like, you have to take me to the hospital. I'm dying. And he called Janet. He and Janet had been talking anyway because they were both very worried. And apparently that was the day he was going to be taking me anyway. So it helped that I was on board. He was very glad he didn't have to take me against my will. Because it is very difficult to get someone, to fight someone that you love into going into a mental health ward. Like, at least I was on board. Now, I didn't really understand what we were doing. I thought we're going to go to the hospital, they're going to give me a shot, or they're going to run some labs and they're going to give me some magic pill and I'm going to come home and be fine. But when the psychiatrist came in and she evaluated me and did all that, and she wouldn't let Charlie be in there, I was like, that's weird. And I hadn't been eating, like at all. Charlie couldn't get me to eat. And she came in and she said, all right, well, we're going to go ahead and get you upstairs. And I was like, oh, that's weird. She's like, now, are you going to sign yourself in or do I have to get a court order?
Wow.
And I looked at Charlie and I was like, what does she mean? Like, I was so out of it. I was like, I can't answer questions like that. And she said, you either sign in or you're not leaving until I get a court order saying that you have to stay, so I was like, well, of course I'm going to sign it, but I'm like crying. Because in my mind, I'm like, I'm never leaving this place. They're going to put me in here and I am going to be like deemed insane and they're never going to let me out. I'm never going to see my family ever again. And I cried and cried and cried because I had no idea. I was so loopy and so out of it. I just remember thinking, this is it for me. They are putting me in here. And some of that is, I don't think that we do a great job when people do go to the ER with mental health crisis. Like, I don't think there's enough advocacy and I don't think there's enough support given to a patient. When we came into the ER, we were really treated. I mean, Charlie actually had to really kind of speak very boldly to one lady. He said, do you remember her calling you an it? I said, no. He's like, when we got there and I told him she's having suicidal thoughts, she's expressing that she wants to kill herself. He said, she looked at the one other lady and said, well, I got another one for you. Where do you want me to put it? He's like, did you just call my wife an it? Man. It's like, she came here for you people to help her. Like, we are here because this is the safe place. You're not going to treat her like she's some animal. So I don't think there's good. Yeah. It was rough. Now, in the mental health ward, everybody was great. But I think in the ER, there's not enough education for them on how to deal. And when I came in, they literally were like, you need to strip completely down. We have to check you and see what you have on you. And they wouldn't even let him leave my stuff in the room. They said, you have to take it to a car. Like she can't have anything in this room.
Yeah, which makes you feel like you're going to prison or something.
They locked the cabinet shut. They like took everything out of the room. It was a very scary, and yet no one was talking to me saying, it's okay. You're going to be okay. We're keeping you safe. Like, they don't say that. They just look at you like you're crazy. Mm-hmm. So then you're feeling more crazy. No, I would love to see some change come to how they handle it in the ER.
Yeah, I've had similar experience with clients where I feel like sometimes, in the ER, a lot of times people with mental health issues are just kind of seen as a problem, or like, oh, I've got to find something to do with this person, or like even like, oh, I have another one, is kind of like, oh, this isn't like a legitimate health issue, right?
Right.
It's almost like downing it, like this isn't a legitimate thing that happened. And I feel sorry for all those experiences you had, because again, it's like your perception going in was like, oh, I'm probably going to go and get a shot, get some medication, whatever, and leave. And then it's like, you've got 4 kids, your husband, all this stuff at home, you're completely not expecting to stay. And it's like, you not only do you have to stay, it's like an undisclosed period of time, and nobody's really reassuring or telling you what's going on. And then it's like you're stripped, like you're almost going to prison. And
it was a lot like prison. And when they wheeled me up, they're like, we're going to get her set in her room and then we'll let you come say goodbye. Mm-hmm. That's what they told Charlie. Well, they wheeled me back, and I remember sitting there and waiting on my bed. And they made Charlie leave from there. They did not let him come back and see me. Mm-hmm. And so I remember thinking, he has ditched me. Like, this was it. Like, he doesn't want to be with me. He doesn't want to deal with this. Mm-hmm. I am too much for him to handle. He's too stressed out. But I didn't know that it was because they were like, nope, sorry, you can't come past these doors. You'll have to come back at visiting hours. Like, they just weren't very clear on what was going on and how it was going to be handled.
What things helped you through that experience, and like what things didn't help as much through that?
I was very skeptical of going to my psychiatrist, but he has been the biggest help. Like, he helps me like lay things out on the table that are going on in life and really examine them and say, so which things need to go? Like, I guess I didn't realize how much of a people pleaser I am, and how much, like, I know I'm a perfectionist. He's like, so if you can't do all of these things perfect, what can you get rid of? Like, he's really great at that. He's amazing at explaining my medication and like why it is helpful and how it's working within my body, and even where it's derived from. What's great is he is a believer, so he brings that in to my appointments, and so he sees both sides. Obviously, my church family was huge. I don't know how people get through mental health crises without Jesus and without that body. Like, I know it's possible, but just the weight that was lifted off of me when they were offering to bring meals and offering to come watch the kids so that I could go to appointments, and offering to help with homeschool, that was incredible. Like, I don't really remember what was not helpful. Like, I mean, I guess what really, and this is something I have to watch that I don't do to people. What wasn't helpful is people like assuming that I needed a certain Bible verse. Like, oh, you should try reading this. Like, well, I mean, this really isn't something I can pray away. Like, yes, if God wants it to be gone that way, that will happen. But like, almost reiterating to me like promises in the Bible that I already knew, but it's like, okay, well, it almost felt not belittling, but I don't know. I know they were trying to help by sending a verse, but it just, even though the Bible was helpful, kind of getting those kind of messages they were difficult in the beginning.
Yeah, I think that completely makes sense, just because it's almost like oversimplifying or over spiritualizing in some ways, where it's like, yes, there's definitely a spiritual aspect, and yeah, like reading the Bible can definitely be something that could be helpful, but like in that moment, you know, I feel like those practical things are,
they weren't open to the fact that this is more than just a spiritual battle. Like, this truly is an actual disorder, and like, there's something wrong with my brain. Like, this isn't just because I haven't prayed enough, or I'm not reading my Bible, or I've walked away from the Lord. Like, and that's part of the problem, is people, that's kind of where Christians put it, is like, oh, if you're dealing with depression, then it's a problem with you and your spiritual life. It has nothing to do. It's like, no, this is an organ that is struggling. And if I broke my leg, we wouldn't just put a Bible on top of it and say, well, your leg is going to get fixed.
Exactly.
Sometimes and I remember writing that in the mental health ward. They gave us paper, and I just kept writing, like, my brain needs to, my brain is broken, and that's okay. Like, it's okay that my mind is broken right now. Like, it's gonna get healed, but it's no different than if I were sick. Like, I am sick. And I think the secular world does a better job at accepting that mental health crisis is a true sickness. I think we honestly struggle in our Christian circles with being okay with that, and not trying to constantly label it as, well, what sin are you dealing with in your life? And, you know, what you should be doing a Bible study, and you should, that's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. And I love that you pointed out, like, I'm sure even now having cancer, like, there haven't been people who are like, oh, you didn't do enough in your faith, you just need to read the Bible more, that kind of thing. With physical things, we would never say that to people. But even though mental health conditions are real conditions, a lot of times we'll say things like people said to you, there's some kind of moral failing that caused this, or your faith's not strong enough for something, and not acknowledging, like, there's so much that goes into mental health, but like, there's a huge part of it that's genetic, that's biological, that's what you're going through with life at the time. And there is a spiritual component, of course, to things too, but like, I think sometimes we overemphasize that in the church, and then it makes it hard. Like, it makes it hard when you do go through something. And I had seen, I think it was a meme a while ago that was like, it's okay to like have Jesus and a psychiatrist too, or something.
Yes.
I
think it does not mean I do not trust Jesus. It does not mean that, like, I'm falling away from Christ. I'm just dealing with me, you know? I am dealing with me.
But I was wondering, like, if there's something you wish that other people knew about mental health, or like struggling with depression, whether that be like postpartum depression, or like any of the stuff you've struggled with mental health wise going through cancer. Like, what do you wish people knew about mental health? Maybe people who've never struggled with it before.
I guess people who have never struggled with it, I wish that they would see it as a true illness that needs medical attention. Like I say, our brain is no different than our leg. If your kid broke their leg, you wouldn't think twice about taking your kid to the doctor and saying, oh my goodness, we have a big issue here. But if your teenager is struggling with anxiety and test anxiety, or, you know, being around people, or struggling, you kind of want to like brush that under the table. It's like, that is just as dangerous as a broken leg. We've got to stop looking at mental problems as not being medical problems. Like, it is a medical problem. We have an entire wonderful medical field, dedicated to it. Let's use it. And I think for people who maybe are gonna go through it, or maybe are coming out of it, I would want them to know, like, coming out of it doesn't mean that it's gone.
Yes.
When you're coming out of it, you might have 1 or 2 good days, and then kind of have some of those same feelings and things where you were in it, and you're gonna think, oh no, I'm back in it. You're not back in it. It's waves, and you have to eventually just ride those waves and know that better days are coming. It does not turn off like a light switch. And there may be things that happen in your life that trigger it, and it just pops up full-fledged in your face again. And it's okay to tell people, I need a minute. Like, I need to talk through this really quickly. I don't know why this has upset me, but let me talk this out and try to figure it out. Because there are still days for me that I will kind of almost flash back and be in a really bad spot. And in the beginning, I thought, I'm right back where I was. I'm not better. I'm never going to be better. But I've learned, like, just because I'm having a bad moment doesn't mean I'm not out of it.
Yeah.
It's always going to affect you. It's going to affect you when you go through trauma, and when your mind struggles that way. Like, you're not going to just forget about it and never go to it. Like, it's going to be part of your life forever. And it's important to seek counselors and stuff that can help you learn how to manage it, to where when it pops back up and it seeps back up within you, you know how to deal with it properly.
Yes.
To where you're not back where you were. You can handle those things. You are stronger. You have grown. But just not to feel defeated by, like, oh, it's here again. It's all right. It's gonna come back, and you're gonna be stronger for it.
Yeah. I just love normalizing that too, because even like in my own personal journey with some of the struggles I've had with anxiety, I feel like that's one part that people really struggle to understand sometimes, is like, it's this ongoing battle, and like you learn through therapy and like medication, or like just coping skills in general, how to better deal with it. But it isn't something, that just disappears overnight. And for like a lot of people, mental health conditions can be these things that go on for years, and you like learn how to better deal with it. But I'm really glad you pointed that out, because I feel like that's so important, is it doesn't just disappear.
No.
Well, thank you for talking with me, Amy. I don't want to take up too much of your time, because you have all your little.
If what I went through can benefit even one person, then it's worth it. Like, if it can help someone to feel normal and to feel not alone, then I'm so glad God allowed it in my life. And I am like more than willing to share it. I am so in love with what you're trying to have come about. Like, I have so many friends who I'm already gonna like be like, look, this is gonna be a great resource for you. Like, go here, use this. Like, I am so proud of you and so excited to see what happens with this.
Thank you. For me, doing counseling in the US, it's like, the stigma was a big thing. Like, people truly not really understanding mental health is a huge thing. So I really wanted to help with that. But then again, the access to counseling for a lot of people can be hard, because it's expensive or inconvenient or far away. So I'm hoping with the blog to eventually be able to like generate money or just resources for people to be able to get free counseling. So that's really like my end goal with it, or hope, is to be able to like help people in that way. Thank you so much for watching this interview. If you haven't already, please sign up to be on the email list for Mental Health Memoirs. That will just help so that you don't miss any new material that we're putting out there. And if you haven't yet, make sure to give a look to 2 of the newest articles I've written. One about different ways that you can deal with anxiety, and another one that I'm going to publish this week that will be on my commitment to sharing diverse stories about mental health on this page. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please comment on my post. You can also send me an email at mentalhealthmemoirs777@gmail.com. Thank you for watching this.